Hi, I'm Darren Daley. Today I'm going to talk about the basics of making a combat game. So I'm going to start off with saying that I'm Darren Daley. I love combat games, they're my favorite. I love stuff like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, DMC. All these games are my favorite sort of things to play and design, to be honest. I prototyped a few before, and to be quite honest, finding information on them is really, really hard, like finding real basic information. So what I've done is I've kind of scraped together the basic information that I could find out making them and put them into this presentation. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually coming up with an idea for a game. So a really decent way of coming up with an idea is like thinking in terms of abilities first. So so think in terms of abilities and then think in terms of concept. A really good ability to think about is this one. This is Miss Valentine. She has the power of the kilo fruit. Essentially, what she can do is change her weight from 1 kilogram to 10,000 kilograms at any moment, at any time. And just think of like the repercussions of that in a game. Like you can make yourself heavy, you can just really come down. You can make yourself lighter and jump really high up or do really cool jumps. Or you can make yourself heavier and then you can make yourself be able to punch harder and make yourself lighter again and then be able to run really fast. Like the implications of like an ability like that are really, really cool. So yeah, that's generally the kind of ideas you want to use when you're trying to come up with a game like that. So next up is, so when you come up with an idea, what you want to do is put in a box drawing in there. So just a little drawing of a box in a level and just start playing around with variables and stuff. You want to like get the game to feel as good as possible. You want the movement to feel right. You want the jump to feel right. You want everything just to feel good in your hands before you really start adding anything towards getting the player to feel good in your hands. All right, cool. Next page. So two really good examples of this. In 2D, what you have is the Mega Man Zero series. Honestly, it's like one of my favorite 2D action games ever. I just love it to death. And a 3D example is the Devil May Cry series. Just brilliant, brilliant execution in terms of like movement. Right, so let's go to the next page. Right, so these boxes here are the collision system for like an action game. So what you have 3 types of boxes. The first box you have is your hurt box. So that's the box that essentially lets the character hurt the other character. Then you have the hit box, which is the blue box, which is the area to which the character can get hit in. And then finally you have the green box, which is the collision box, which is just essentially just the box that handles the collision for the player in the environment. And how this is how you like introduce nuance into like an action game. You can just kind of have one box in there, but you know, this is the kind of system you really, really want to have in there. Cool. So I'll just show you how it will look quickly in terms of how it looks in game. So if you notice, as the character moves around, the boxes move along. So in each frame, what's essentially happening is that it replaces the boxes and just, you know, sorry, not brilliant. Yeah, it replaces the boxes and essentially allows you to get hit and stuff like that, depending on the actual frame of the animation. And it also allows you to have a hurt window open as well. Ugh, it's playing it again. Sorry, give me a second. Yeah, it's not going fantastically. There. Yeah, frame rates. Yeah, I know, no one wants to talk about them, blah, blah, blah. But I will say one thing about this. For like an action game, you want to design it for an action game. And in an action game, you want as much nuance and as much time to react and act as possible. And for you to really get that sort of thing, 60 FPS is the best. Is something you should aim for. It's not as though you can't design a good action game at 30 FPS. It's more that this is generally the smarter option. It looks smoother. It gives you more nuance. And it's just the smart idea. I'll get off of people talking about frame rates. Anyway, so the next thing I want to talk about is input buffering. So what input buffering is essentially, okay, so imagine you're doing an attack. So you have your basic attack, you swing the sword, and then you swing the sword up again. So what happens is that the game will remember how long you've pressed the button so that it can string the next attack. So for example, you press a button once, and then you wait a second, and you press it again, and the computer will completely forget because that's the smart thing to do. But if you press a button for like half a second afterwards, you press it, then it will remember. So, like I mentioned before, if you just kind of like have the game remember that you press the button for like any longer than a second, then it just kind of feels as though you're playing by yourself. It's playing itself. It doesn't actually feel as though you're actually engaged in the game. So I wouldn't suggest doing it that way. 500 milliseconds to about 1,000 milliseconds, it also feels a bit too automatic. 250 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds is just about right for me. And 100 milliseconds to 200 milliseconds is really, really hard just because pressing a button in a tenth of a second is just hard to do and a pain, and it's frustrating, and it just makes you incredibly annoyed. Right, so what I want to talk about next is cooldown. So the concept of cooldown is essentially, it's kind of this mechanic that allows an attack to balance out an attack. So like in this first video, I'll show you, this first video, like these attacks are fairly weak. And you can essentially just spam them infinitely in this because they're weak. This is generally what you do, and you can just keep going and going, and it doesn't really matter, they're weak attacks, so yeah, whatever. But when you switch over to a heavier attack, you'll notice, it's very, very slight to be honest, that after a while, the attack will just force you to pause, go back in the neutral stance, and then continue onwards. This is to like balance out like how much you can like use the attack. So you don't want like your attack patterns to like be able to spam that and not use the light attack at all. You want to like balance out the power and the usage of each attack between the two. So let's go next. Nope, plays it again. Yeah. Cool. Right, so the next concept you generally have in an action game is this thing called cancelling. Now, to be honest, cancelling is something that took me a while to kind of get my head around because my older me used to just mash buttons and be like, eh, whatever. So what cancelling is a prioritization of attacks, so a movement over attacks. So for example, if you swing your sword and then you want to move out the way, it will just completely stop the attack and then allow you to jump and move out the way. And this is something that's really done a lot in single-player action games. Funny enough, I was actually playing Super Smash Bros. And yeah, there's no cancelling in it whatsoever. Well, no authored cancelling. You can cancel, but it's kind of more of a thing where you can just like, it's more of a thing that the designers didn't really design in there so much as people have discovered it through just sheer force of will. So yeah, so if you look here at this video, you'll notice that you swing the sword once, you swing it again, and then you can jump, and then you just cut off the jump animation altogether, and it just allows you to jump. This is for the game, in a single player game anyway, to make it feel fair. You don't want to be swinging a sword, something attacks you, you press jump, and it's just like, nope, we need to wait for this attack to finish. You want it to feel responsive, you want it to feel fast, you want it to feel good. So yeah, just cancel all animations, what's happening, let the player move, essentially. All right, let me go on to the next slide. Prototyping. So, prototype in an action game, what you really want to do is you want to create a system as complete as possible, but you also want to cut as many corners as possible and get it done quickly. So a perfect example of this is Bayonetta. Bayonetta is like easily one of my favorite games. And when I found this, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this. So if look at this video. This is what they got done of this game in a month. So all the attacks, all the basic attacks are in there. She has her guns. She has a Panther mode. She has a grappling stuff. She has a gun twirly stuff. And she has a freeze time. And this is in a span of a month. I was amazed at this. And then if you look at like the final version of this game, yeah, like it's essentially the same game except with a ton of polish and a lot more structuring. All the attacks are still there, the witch time's still there, the grappling stuff's still there, everything is still there. And this is like, I was just amazed at this. And if you want to see another team who are really, really good at this, Vlambeer are amazing at this. Like JW can like crunch out like a core of a game in a span of days. Nuclear Throne, he made that in about what? He made the core of that game in about 3 days, and it plays, well, the core of it is essentially the same thing as it has been for the last 3 years. And yeah, just learn how to prototype a game as complete as possible, as quickly as possible, so you can just churn out ideas and see if they stick. All right, let's go to the next one. So I'm not going to talk much about game feel here because, to be quite honest, there's so much material on this, and most of you have probably all heard it before, but I'll give like a quick summation of interesting stuff that you can look at. So you have Errant Signal's kinesthetics video, which is a really good explanation of game feel in general. Then you have Steve Swink's book on game feel, which gives a lot more detail and a lot more examples of game feel. And you have JW from Vlambeer's video of Screen Shake, which is amazing because it gives just all the examples and all the details that you would really want to put in a game. So yeah, that should pretty much cover game feel. All right. But I will say one thing though, especially in action games, you need to be as detailed as you possibly can. Like, you miss out one detail in terms of like, like, you know, polish and look, and the game kind of feels off. So like a really good example of this is in Bayonetta. If you look, this is the game just without its special effects. It has all its animation, has all of its like, you know, freeze pausing stuff. Just without the effects, it does look strange, doesn't it? All right, go for it. Okay, and then you go to Bayonetta with effects, and yeah, it's a completely different story. It feels and looks more awesome than it did before. Like, it feels more impactful, and it feels more complete as a game. All right, so let her finish off that one enemy, and we're done. Cool. Right. So next slide here. All right, so this talk that I just gave, really short, really basic stuff. If you want like a detailed talk about this stuff, like Ben Ruiz is your guy. He talks about just all of the concepts of putting into a great action game with like immense amount of detail, and I'm pretty sure this talk will give you at least a decent idea of what he's talking about. So yeah, so let me have a look, see here. And yeah, like I said, like I mentioned before, go on his blog. He's done like amazing writing in terms of like, you know, action game breakdowns, how to animate an attack, what attacks, how to detail an attack, all that stuff he really covers on there too. And Technopants, the guy who made Samurai Guy and who's also working on Hyperlight Drifter, he's done like a ton of blogs earlier in his career just about movement and jumping and stuff like that. That really covers this sort of stuff as well in terms of just movement and stuff. And it's really decent read. But yeah, yeah, I think that's me about done. Those are my details. And I did not realize this talk would take this little time. So if you have any questions about action games or anything like that, you can ask them and I may be able to cover them. I should be able to cover them. Anyone? Robert?
Sorry, you mentioned there's 3 different types of hitboxes.
Yes.
I didn't quite get the difference between them. Would you mind just...
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Okay, so let's go back. So yeah, so there's like I mentioned. So there's one box that actually handles the collision with the actual world. So like if you're on the floor, then it would be like, yeah, this character's on the floor. The hitbox is the box to which the player can actually be hit in. So for example, if the hurt box, which is a box that hurts the player, collides with the hitbox, then that registers as a hit. But if the hurt box collides with the collision box, then it won't do anything. And if the hurt box collides with another hurt box, then it will do something really cool. Like a really good example of hurt box versus hurt box collision is like the sword clash in Samurai Gun, where your swords just clash and your two players just split apart. And it's really, really cool. Like, I don't know if you guys pulled it off, but yeah. Does that help, or do you need some more detail?
I think that helps, yeah.
All right, cool. Anyone else have it? Oh, cool. So I'll be told I should stop. But yeah, anyway, it was, thanks for having me here, guys.